So I have a keen interest in the improvement of performance, especially for swimmers and triathletes. And I'm always curious about uh, new or increased awareness of warm-up strategies, and in particular have focused on warm-up strategies for swimmers in the past. There's a article coming out in the September issue of the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research from Enrique Neiva and his team, and he and his team tend to do lots of research into swimming warm-up strategies. So I'm usually pretty excited to see what he's got coming. In this particular experiment, he took 13 young male swimmers, these are average age of 17, and took them through two different warm-up strategies. Now, obviously, when we're applying this research, we've got to consider that it was a small group of young male swimmers only. So just keep that in mind. But he took them through two different warm-up strategies. Everybody did both strategies, by the way. They were both about 1,200 meters long, and this was in preparation for a 100-meter race. So during that warm-up, they either did a sort of a race-specific warm-up where it was 2 by 50 meters drill, 2 by 50 meters building velocity, and then 4 by 25 at race pace, followed by 25 easy. That was the race-specific version. And then there was an aerobic version where they did 8 by 50 at a critical velocity. So this is like at your sort of aerobic, your max aerobic pace. So what they found was pretty interesting. But to kind of dispel what you're already thinking, there was no difference between the two groups in terms of the two strategies, I should say. It was the same group in terms of performance. However, there were some interesting biomechanical changes that happened between the two experimental conditions. And what was interesting was when they did the race-specific warm-up, which was labeled the control. This actually increased the stroke frequency of the first part of the 100-meter race. So there was a higher turnover. On the other hand, when they did the experimental condition, where it was more of an aerobic, top-end aerobic pace, they found that there was actually an increased efficiency of the overall stroke. So while it didn't make a difference in time, it did make a difference in what happened in specifically the first quarter to half of that race. Now, this does have application, and specifically in the discussion, they elucidated some of the interesting points, and I thought that this was worth noting. One, if you're having difficulty trying to, say, get out in front, an increased stroke frequency would help you do that. So warming up with a little bit more race-specific warm-up would be helpful for that. On the other hand, if you are needing to be warm for a longer duration, maybe there's a little bit more time between your warm-up and between your actual performance, then you would need to do maybe more of an aerobic warm-up to keep your body temperature elevated. So there's different application for different athletes for different strategies, and more research will need to be done, of course, to see if this applies to females in the same way. I've seen in the past that females do respond differently to different warm-up strategies, different stretching strategies. So that's interesting. That'll be interesting to see. But it can have crossover, I think, specifically for some shorter distance triathlon races where you're thinking about your strategy. How long do I have before I actually finish my warm-up and then have to get back into the race? How much time is there in between those? And then also, what is my greatest need? Do I need to have a higher turnover, greater efficiency, or what is my actual goal for the first part of that race? So always be thinking about that. A warm-up is not just a warm-up, and there are always different strategies to take.